Okay, you guys, good to see you two here one more time before we wrap up the course. So I'm going to go ahead and get us going. And again, this will probably take maybe 20 minutes tops, so pretty brief session this time around. All right, so we are winding down with defining the portfolio subject. And again, I've emphasized it in the previous weeks, but this is one of the more important steps in setting the foundation for your portfolio project. And I have taken a look at the audience characteristics that everyone described for their particular audience and given some feedback there. Overall, I think everybody did well. I didn't see any that were overly generalized. And in some cases, they were highly specific, which is always good to see. As you know, defining the audience really shapes the nature of your media design. So this is an essential step. And in some cases, I did point out that there's potentially secondary audiences, like the learners in your case, Javier, and in one of your classmates who had a modeling agency, the audiences might be those who are in need of that agency's services versus aspiring models who are looking for an agency to represent them. So those two factors will take very different message designs, the way you speak, as well as the message itself. So that's the important thing about defining an audience, and that's something that that you should really keep in mind. And this is something I'm saying to everyone in the class, watching the archive as well, is anytime you're doing a media project, think of who your audience is and think of how you can best communicate to them and tailor your message as well as the media you choose for that purpose. You know, sometimes it's not necessarily what you're best at, not your specialty, and not what you might like yourself, but it's what would appeal to that audience, and that's the need of that project. So it's very important to be flexible in that way as a media professional. As an instructional designer, as you know, Javier, you never know what subject matter you're going to be working with, so be ready for anything. Did you guys, did either of you have any questions about the subject selection or the audience characteristics? Anything that I said in my feedback? Or, yes. Okay, very good. Excellent. So building on that idea, we're now going to take a look at your subject's media needs. And this is really just a brainstorming session that you're thinking about how you can apply media towards the goals of your portfolio subject. And think about this in terms of media in a general sense, in a broad sense. So everybody's subject is very different. Some of them are making use of media already. I know, Kevin, yours is itself a radio station, which is a media outlet. So it can be assumed that you're broadcasting audio content in some way. I think yours is online, so it's more of a streaming system. So that's kind of a given, though. You have that content. How else might you use alternate forms of media to further those goals? This could be for marketing purposes. Could be social media to connect with your audience in a more one-on-one or personal manner. Or expanding the media that's already being used. So if you look at your radio station's content and you see an opportunity to broaden what you're offering, include different programming, different shows, then that could be part of the media need as well. So take a really close look at what's being done. Is the subject using media, and in what ways? And then consider if they're using the media to the best of its ability. Is it being used up to its potential? Are there new paradigms that are emerging and ways that you can use the existing formats in new and interesting ways? Or would you implement something completely new? And Javier, I believe that yours is your subject is more of a sort of a hypothetical instructional technology company. Am I remembering that correctly? So some of this might not be in place, and it's more speculative. Like you're speculating on how you might leverage um, your media formats and your media content. Okay, so a lot of this will simply be you, looking ahead, looking at what you would do if you had that opportunity, or what you will do down the road. And the intention here is partly to inform your portfolio efforts. Some of the portfolio projects are going to be set for you. So in Portfolio 2, you're going to do a style guide. Portfolio 3 is a video project. Portfolio 4, though, you can really choose the media project you want. So if you see a clear need at this point with some of these media needs, then you could potentially address that at that point. Once you have some more coursework under your belt, you've had some time with some of the development tools, video editing and web design and so forth, then you'll be more prepared to look at these needs again, so you can revisit this topic and pick something that you really want to work with, that you see as being a pressing need, and make that your project for that month, because it is open-ended at that point. Also, at this point, start thinking about resources that would be needed to implement some of these things. This is in terms of money, equipment, personnel, any kind of resources that might be needed to implement the recommendations that you're offering. And I'm not looking for you to go out and look up specific equipment costs or salaries or anything like that, although you can. I'm not going to stop you from doing that. But just so you have an idea of what some of these things entail. Social media, for instance, is practically free. Of course, Facebook now has where you can pay to promote your page and so forth. But having a Facebook identity or Twitter identity or Instagram or what have you really has no costs other than having somebody take the time to keep it updated. And it's pretty effective at connecting with an audience in a very personal way. You can directly connect to your customers, to your listeners, to whoever they might be. On the other hand, producing TV commercial spots starts getting into some pretty high costs, and it's a richer media format and being broadcast to a very broad audience. So really different requirements, really different costs to think about. Right, a URL cost as well, or a domain name for websites, and hosting fees and so forth. So are any needs jumping out, or anything coming to mind at this point with your individual portfolio subjects? Okay, so subject matter experts. And yeah, while not specifically a media need, that is definitely a operational need when it comes to instructional design, is having someone who can inform your content. Right, when building unfamiliar subjects that are unfamiliar to yourself. Yeah, they are pretty essential having that expertise to inform your work. And developers, yeah, I was just thinking that along that line of thought. Having worked as an instructional designer, you usually have the designer who does a lot of the content and curriculum writing, and then you have graphic artists and video producers and web programmers and so forth that do a lot of the technical and artistic work. So and each one of them have their own salaries as well as their own equipment needs. So that's where a lot of those costs come into play. How about you, Kevin? Any thoughts on how you might leverage new media formats to help promote or further your radio station's success? No, not yet. Okay. And really, the sky's the limit. So, just since this is all hypothetical at this point, you can really kind of shoot for the ideal situation or the more limited scope situation, things that are immediately feasible versus things that are, um, long-term goals. Javier, I saw your comment about tell that to my boss, and I know in sometimes you end up wearing a lot of hats and doing a lot of the design work yourself. Okay, so your station is trending. That's a good sign. And then do you have like a pretty good social media presence for that for your station? So that's something I've noticed with some of the local stations here in the Orlando area. Is a lot of times when there's a a new or one of the shows starting up, they'll tweet it or post on Facebook. This is starting now. Tune in, to listen. Um, so it's a good way of broadcasting when new content is available. Okay. Um, so that's where we're at. But really think of this and be very flexible in terms of what we consider media, because remember that uh, we have print media as well. The old-fashioned newspapers are still around, radio, TV, streaming media, as well as social media. I usually see a big emphasis on social media, but there is a lot of opportunities for rich media content as well. As well as overlap. And okay, there you go. Yeah, making use of all the social media networks, and then think of how you can interconnect the two, or interconnect the outlets so that they support one another, and even sharing rich media um, on the social media outlets as well, because video content is becoming more and more a staple of Facebook and Twitter and all the rest. Were there any questions? Any unclear details about where we're going with this? Okay, well, you guys have been pretty well on top of things with this course, and it's a fairly lightweight course. Getting the foundation set. That if anything should come to mind, definitely be sure to get in touch. And I look forward to seeing how it all turns out. But if there are no other questions, then I'm happy to let you go. And you guys have a great night as well.